I'm Alad Gila, one of the co-founders of Reach. Cold Email Hot Takes is a mini video series in which we talk to inspiring sales leaders about their approach to outbound sales. In this week's episode, we're excited to have with us Roy from BizDev Labs. Can you quickly introduce yourself, Roy?
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. So BizDev Labs has worked with over 35 SaaS startups to date, and we help them with their go-to-market strategy. So we do a lot of different things. Outbound is one of them. I started as a BDR myself, and we try to figure out a way to stand out in a tough market with a lot of noise.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. I think especially because you're working with so many teams and so many different companies in different sectors. It's great to have somebody with that perspective, that bird's eye perspective of what works and what doesn't. One of the things that we see a lot in our work and the people we talk to is people are overwhelmed with the amount of emails they get, and it's really hard to stand out as a rep doing cold outbound. So I'm wondering what you've seen that's worked in terms of getting noticed and standing out from the crowd.
Yeah, so I would say there's three key pillars that we look for. The first one is you have to really know the buyer and the person you're reaching out to. That's why I really care about something called subject matter expertise and being able to resonate with the people that you're reaching out to. I think a lot of times BDRs they need a lot of education in that area. They need to understand exactly what they're selling to and what they're interested in. Because when you speak to a CEO and you're in entry-level position, there's kind of misalignment. So being able to understand exactly who you're reaching out to and why and how they speak and the lingo they use and all these kind of stuff is very important. And it's something that companies need to work towards. The two other ones is relevancy. So towards like buying signals and things that they're experiencing, whether it's headcount growth or changes or funding, like stuff like that, being able to identify and targeting those buying signals. And the third one is personalization and being able to target a specific person and personalizing to them. Otherwise, a lot of times they just brush it off. And people want to, so.
That makes a lot of sense. I think, especially what you're kind of saying about like knowing who you're reaching out to, right? Knowing the role. I think this is something that a lot of people don't spend enough time on, which is kind of all of the research that goes in before you actually hit send or you actually pick up the call to talk to the phone to talk to somebody is making sure you really know like what is probably keeping this person up at night, right? And making sure what they do. So I can imagine that's a big piece of the puzzle. But so regarding personalization, since you mentioned it, like are there things that you see that you like using for personalization? Like, do you focus on the individual? Do you focus on the account? Do you focus on their experience? Do you use like light stuff around their hobbies? What do you like to use for personalization?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it depends on the kind of, like, if it's enterprise, it might be way more worthwhile to do personalization, especially for the higher ups and the C-level executives. To me, what I really care about is personalizing to the account, to the company in general, and being super relevant to them, to the problem they're facing or to the buying signals they're experiencing as a whole. Less so personalization to the person. Not saying that it's not important, but just in terms of time allocation, that's how I kind of view things.
Yeah, I like that as too. I really like showing that you've kind of done your research on the company you're reaching out to, and something relevant about either like a new development, something that's happened with them. Speaking of that, you mentioned just before that about triggers as one of the things to use when you're reaching out, and I'm curious, like what are you monitoring? Like, do you have certain tools that help you with that, or are you kind of just sticking to LinkedIn, or what do you see, or what do you have that's kind of keeping your finger on the pulse and say, okay, here's the trigger, let's reach out?
Yeah, the two biggest ones that most people are familiar with is probably funding and hiring for a role. So for BizDev Labs, for example, we reach out to companies that are hiring SDRs. So that's a big buying signal for us because we know they're looking for outbound or business development work. Same thing with most companies and whatever they sell. There's typically some title that companies are hiring for that will signal a growth in that team. And funding usually is another big one. There's a lot of new initiatives that come into play, and there's budget opening up. So those two. There's another one, change jobs. Somebody who just changed jobs recently is typically looking to implement new things. Those things I think are very important to identify.
I like that. Yeah, no, I think that makes headcount growth is obviously a big one, and you're right. It kind of indicates like if things are going up or down in terms of their investment across the team. I'm curious, like when you're reaching out to cold, for cold outreach, what's your stance on like this quote unquote adding value? A lot of people talk about the need to add value to your prospects. Do you like sending kind of sales collateral? Do you like sending, things, resources you think could be interesting to them, or do you think that's kind of a waste of time?
No, I think those are great. Like you always want to educate and provide resources. The only problem I see is that they send them to a blog of 10,000 words and like huge essays. And what I think it's great in theory, but in reality, nobody's going to read a blog that much. I would much rather summarize the blog for them, make it into like a short LinkedIn post or something like that. And first of all, definitely post it on LinkedIn, but why not just put it in an email? Don't send them to another platform. Make it very easy for them to consume the content. But that goes to the second part of education. And I think the only way to add value is to educate or to entertain. So teach me something new or make me laugh. Those are two ways to add value. And both stand out. There's really good BDRs that are really funny. They do memes and stuff like that, and they stand out and start conversations. My approach is super educational. Like, let me teach you about the space and what we're doing. Let me teach you about the differences between X and Y. Let me show you a little bit about the integration and how we plug into your systems very easily. And I believe people care about different things, and you can educate on a lot of different stuff. And as long as one of the things that I'm trying to educate resonates with you, it opens up room for conversation.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, right? I think that every touch point probably should have something that is, as you say, kind of educational or new or relevant or if you keep reaching out and kind of saying the same thing, like why are you reaching out, right? It's kind of like
Exactly.
at some point it's so you can keep it fresh by offering something new, I suppose, a new kind of education, something funny, or maybe even something relevant, like something newsworthy. Would you agree with that? Like that there's the amount of touch points you have and sort of a cadence is sort of a function of as long as you can keep offering something new or interesting.
100%. That's the exact variable that you said. As long as you continue adding something new and interesting, not just, hey, following up and those stuff that add no value and is all about you versus them. The other thing to consider is the type of message you're sending. There could be a text, there could be a graphic, there could be a video. People learn different things, and it's also another way to say the same message in a different way. So maybe it's the same value prop, but maybe you are a person that likes to consume videos. So it's worth experimenting and trying these things out. That allows you to increase your touch points. So I think that's very important. Also, the reason why I post so much on LinkedIn is because it's an infinite amount of touch points. Every day you touch my account or something that I'm producing, which adds to those touch points. But touch points are definitely important. You're building a relationship with someone, and you don't know what resonates all the time, so you got to try different things.
And how do you think about sort of writing your emails? Like, have you found something that you really try to focus on the problem of the person you're reaching out to, or that you think, hey, like I have a guess around this that you might be facing, or do you like to focus more on just kind of the value that you've brought to other companies and use that as kind of like hey, we've helped these XYZ companies do 20% better. Like, what do you like to do?
That's a really good question. There's two parts to it. The first one is I already have like a playbook of things that I put into email. One of them, you just said, it's social proof. One of my emails that I will send to you will be social proof. Will be, hey, we're working with similar companies like this. This is what they were able to achieve. Kind of like a case study put into email format. The other one could be around KPIs and metrics. Here are the metrics that we're able to impact. There's another one about integration. There's another one about the problem that we solved. And that could actually be spread into 2 or 3 emails of, hey, problem number 1, problem number 2, problem number 3. So those foundational types of emails is what I always go to with every company. And right now we have 8 or 9 of those types of emails that are all different, on touch on different things. So that's one. The other side is every time I write an email, I ask myself, what is the key question that I would ask a prospect when I'm reaching out? For example, how are you doing X? Or have you thought about Y? Those foundational questions are very important. And I think if you ask, it's like sales, right? If you ask the right question, how are you currently measuring this? And if they aren't able to measure it, all of a sudden they realize there's a gap. So I try to ask smart questions to bridge or to push on the gap of where they are now and where they can be.
Yeah, the gap selling approach, we like it as well. It definitely like exposes where they're missing things, and where you can obviously start to fill in those gaps. Um, so in that vein, right, like you think about like, the question is something I think about a lot because it's something that, especially when you think about like the call to action, is it something that you pushing for a call immediately, or are you going for the soft CTA where it's like interest based and saying, hey, is this something that's like relevant to you? Are you interested in this? Would you be open to learning about this? Like, what's your preferred tactic there?
Yeah, I have CTAs also. Sometimes I ask for a call, sometimes it's soft, sometimes stuff like that. I think it is just on a like a more general level is my mindset around I don't care if you book or not. That's not my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is to educate and stuff like that. And I hope that you book, but I actually don't judge every email with the idea of educating, of booking a meeting. I judge it as, hey, are you finding it interesting? Is it giving you value and all these stuff? And ultimately, obviously, drives the results. One little trick that I do is I have in my signature, I have a like demo request or book some time. And sometimes naturally people just click it, find time, and they don't even have to reply. So just makes that streamline the whole process.
So, what would you do? Like, so it sounds like you're doing like a mix of things, but like, so because we talked to various people, and I think it's kind of trendy now to like move away from the hard CTA of like, hey, you want to jump on a call, right? I think people are very protective of their time. The whole thought process is like, well, don't go for that knee jerk reaction right away because that's going to be most people's response. Like, gauge interest, and if there's interest, then it's easy to kind of build more rapport and kind of move in that direction. Do you kind of agree with that, or are you thinking no, it's better to like cut through the noise and just like immediately ask if they
No,
want
I do. Like, if they wanted to buy from you, they'll find a way to book with you. I don't need to ask you for time to, like, it's a sales email. You know what I'm trying to get to. It just wasted space, in my opinion. I think there's more ways to add value. Ask a good question, and then one of them from Josh Brown. Brown is like, have you ever considered doing XYZ in order to something like that, and leave it up to them, or let me know if you'd like more info, or hope it helps, like stuff like that. Very soft, and yeah, and they can always reply. Give them the control.
Exactly. It's really kind of starting a conversation, right? I think it's a much more natural way to engage with people. I think
Mhm.
just psychologically, right? People are, which I agree with. I think people are probably now more than ever before very protective of their time, and so like it's much easier for me to engage in email, like quick exchange, to say, yeah, it's actually something we've been thinking about, than it is to say like, yes, let's book time because I don't know you, and like you're going to try to pitch me something.
Mhm.
So I tend to agree. I'm curious if uh, you know, do you have an optimal number of touch points? Like, do you when like in your cadences, have you found like, okay, I'm gonna keep like reaching out for a while? Is it like, no, I put everybody in
Nice.
like a month long period, and after that, I put them in a nurturing campaign? What's your preferred approach?
That's a really good question. I do believe in, like, I don't want to spam and don't want to bother you. So to me, it's like one email a week max is, I think, a good approach. And as long as you're adding value and stuff, I think that's fine. The way I look at it is there's two types of people. One that are ready to buy now and probably will respond to your first or second email and book a meeting. If by the second or third or whatever email, like in the short period of time, they don't book, it's very likely that it's going to be hard for you, even on the 10th touch point, to convert, although some might, but the biggest percentage won't.
Right.
So what I would look for is other ways to touch them, not only just on email, but create content and go on all these different channels and create TikTok videos and do all this and this and that. That's the only way to actually convert them. I think a lot of people look at outbound as like maybe 10 touch points, right? And they'll tell you, hey, we need 10. I actually think it should be like 50 touch points, right? Show up at events, do all these kind of stuff. And that all goes back to branding. That's the only way to actually convert the rest of the people. So I really focus my time on literally on the edge of both. One is I either convert you right away with one message, or I'll convert you on the 50th. That's how I look at it. So
I really appreciate that. I think we've come to kind of a similar conclusion, which is that um, and I think the data kind of speaks for itself, right? Is like timing is usually going to be wrong, right? Timing is wrong for most people you're reaching out to. When you're doing cold, it's really hard to nail timing, unless you, of course, really nail triggers, and that obviously is great. Like if you're tracking triggers, that's a good way to know that you're like on point for timing. But for the most part, it's going to be wrong. So, kind of that approach of like, okay, if I know that this is going to be right for most people, how do I stay top of mind and relevant and interesting to them? So then when timing is right, I'm the one they think about, and I think that's what we've come to do. And I think LinkedIn obviously is a great tool for that, but obviously there are others, and just kind of very organically and hopefully in a more valuable way, just being the one they think about when they think about this topic, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you just have to be creative with the touch points. I think a lot of people are like just cold calling, emails, and like there's so much more. There's so many ways to increase your touch points. And I really think like 50 is a scary number. If I told every BDR you have to get to 50 touch points, all of a sudden their entire strategy would change. But I think it's
Sure.
exciting. It's like, okay, now actually, how do we actually implement it? So
I also think it kind of takes the pressure off in a way. I think in some ways, like once you've kind of accepted that I don't need to close every deal in like 2 to 3 touch points, I think it takes a more realistic approach and allows you to actually be more authentic and more interesting and more creative, as you say, because you're saying, okay, like I'm in this for the long game. Like I have to plant seeds, I have to kind of nurture it, I have to become like quote unquote farmer here and like really like water this over time, and eventually when timing is right, I'll be there to collect. But it's not that pressure of like I have to be like super needy and like book this now and then forget it. Like it's and in many ways it's probably a much
exactly.
like healthier way to approach it. Well, this has been a lot of fun talking to you, Roy. I think again, you have a lot of experience dealing with tons of teams and doing their outbound. So, thanks again for sharing your perspective, your tips, and look forward to having another convo with you soon.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks for having me.